Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your love and affection and lots of appreciation for all the podcasts that I'm doing. Today we are going to discuss about a new topic that's all about light. So when it comes to light, is the artificial light killing us? Is the light going to support our health? Is light going to provide us healthy life? So these are the questions that are there in my mind. And luckily, we got an awesome guest who is a former Harvard professor. It's really privileged to have him on this show. None other than Dr. Martin. We call him as Light Doctor. He has also authored a book called To Be Light Doctor. He has worked in this area for several years. And today we are going to discuss about the sunlight, the artificial light, and the impact of them on our body. So, not delaying much, I will be getting into the discussion. Before that, I want to tell you all, if you really like this podcast, please do like it, share it, and comment on it, because this is a new kind of podcast which is going to discuss about a very excellent concept. So thank you, Dr. Martin. It's a great honor to have you on my show. So can you please introduce yourself, Dr. Martin, to my audience?
Absolutely. It's a delight to be with you, Reggie. My name is Dr. Martin Moore-Ede. I was a professor at Harvard Medical School for 23 years, working on the clocks of the body, the circadian clocks, and how they regulate sleep and our health. And along the way, one of the key areas I got into was how light affects our health. It turns out to be really critical. And what I'm going to describe is how the light that you see every day is as important to your health as the food you eat, the water you drink, and the air you breathe. It's quite, in fact, you could argue that it's actually more important. And it's important because we have this strange relationship to light, so that in the first 10,000 generations of human existence, ever since there were human beings walking around on the planet, we were exposed to bright daylight sunlight during the day, and we slept in the dark at night. And what has happened in the recent years has been, first of all, the introduction of electric light, but most importantly, in the last 10 years, we've seen the widespread introduction of LED lights. Now, LED lights are a wonderful technology. They're claimed to be energy efficient. They now comprise probably 95% of light sales are going into LEDs these days. But the problem is that they actually have very significant harmful effects on health. And part of that is that there's two parts of that. One is they fail to provide all the elements of the natural spectrum that are important for our health. And the second part of it, they actually provide at night parts of the spectrum that are very harmful to health, that will actually cause increased risk of obesity, of diabetes, of heart disease, of psychiatric illnesses, of immune disorders, and also key cancers, particularly hormone-sensitive, endocrine-sensitive cancers, such as breast cancer, prostate cancer, and colorectal cancer are some of the largest and most common cancers and biggest killers of people in the world today. So the fact that we've taken light for granted, it's so easy. There's a switch on the wall, you switch on the light, you can see what you're doing. The fact that we've looked at light as just something to illuminate our lives, and so we can see, so we can read, so we can make places look pretty. It's been a design aesthetic thing, the use of light, without realizing that the composition of light, much of which you cannot see with the human eye, because it all looks like white or yellowish light, it matters enormously. And so my work has been on that. And in fact, it's not just my work. There are 20,000 scientists around the world who've been working on the problem of how light impacts our circadian clocks and causes these various disease conditions. And yet, the general public and even most people in the medical profession don't really understand the full consequence of this. So it's really, I think, it's great that I'm able to talk with you and your audience, Rajesh, and we can actually discuss this and bring a broader awareness to it.
That's very good to know, Dr. Martin. So, from my childhood, I know three kinds of light, Dr. Martin. One is filament light, the other one is tube light. Now we are seeing LED light. So, as per you, which light is good for health?
Well, they all have limitations, but essentially the incandescent light bulb is actually probably the healthiest one in terms of the quality of light, because it not only produces visible light, it also produces infrared. And what we're now understanding is infrared is very important. It actually is critical to stimulating the mitochondria. Those are the power cells in every cell of the body that generate energy, generate adenosine triphosphate, ATP, which is essential to many chemical reactions and normal biology. And we know that basically the absence of that in LED lights means that we're actually deprived. Now, there's lots of infrared light in natural sunlight. In our previous, if you were talking about your grandfather, he'd be talking about candles and wood fires, right? And those lights have lots of infrared light and very little blue. And when Edison invented the first light bulbs, the incandescent light bulbs, the filaments, 100 years ago, he mimicked candlelight. So again, there's relatively little blue and lots of infrared. And that's actually quite healthy. But as we've gone from, and unfortunately, the people who are concerned with regulating electrical efficiency have gone overboard in banning those lights today, so that people now can't buy any longer, certainly in Europe or in, I don't know what it is in India, but certainly in Europe and in America, you cannot buy those incandescent light bulbs. They're banned. In fact, you pay a fine of $500 for every light bulb that you buy. So it's a pretty drastic. And instead, we have these LED lights which have no infrared to them and also have lots of blue. And the blue is really the key thing here, because the clock in our brain that times our rhythms, it's called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. I led the team at Harvard that discovered this clock back in the 1980s and showed that it was synchronized by light, is actually synchronized predominantly by the blue part of the spectrum. Now, you know, sunlight contains ultraviolet. It contains all the colors of the rainbow, the violets, the blues, the greens, the yellows, the reds, and so forth, and it contains infrared. That's the full spectrum of healthy light. And so that basically it turns out that the body, and it's not just humans, but animals, ever since life began, have used a very narrow part of that spectrum in the sky blue range, which is synchronizes our clock. And we have actually receptors in the back of our eyes called retinal ganglion cells, or intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, IPRGCs, which contain a photopigment called melanopsin. And melanopsin is uniquely sensitive to that sky blue light. Around 480 nanometers is the wavelength where it's most sensitive. Now, when our eyes detect any of that 480 nanometer sky blue light, it signals that it is daytime outside. And it sends a signal back from the eyes into our central clock in the brain, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or the SCN. And that SCN then sends messages to the pineal gland and so forth. And basically we go, when we see the blue light, we go into day mode. When we see no blue light, that's interpreted as dark. It's dark outside. And now the body can go into the natural repair and recovery of nighttime. Now, when we start using LED lights in the evening, which are pumping out this blue light, it is now shifting our clocks, disrupting our clocks, providing an entirely confusing signal. And that's a real problem. And that's now been associated with all sorts of ill health. So I can put a group of perfectly healthy people in a room, we've done this, in a conference room or whatever room, and I change the light, or put in these LED lights, these blue-rich LED lights in the evening, and I can make those people pre-diabetic. In other words, they will have increased insulin resistance, their glucose tolerance test, they'll fail the measures of diabetes. I can do that within a few hours. They will also become much more hungry and want to eat more snacks. In fact, people under LED lights eat more snacks. But if I take those same people and put them in the same room on another time, and at that time I am using lights that have no blue in them, but at the same brightness, in other words, same lux level, so the visible brightness is the same, there's just none of that blue, then these diabetic problems won't occur. So you can see that some of these disorders and diseases caused by light occur almost immediately. So that's one key part of it. One key part is avoiding blue-rich light in the evening is really critical to not sending our bodies a signal which causes all sorts of unhealthy problems. The second big message is to get out in the daytime and particularly in the morning hours, before the sun's at its peak. Get out in the morning hours and get exposed to natural daylight. It doesn't matter if it's a cloudy day because there's still so much more light outdoors than indoors. Indoors, we work, where you are right now probably has about 300 or so lux of light. Outdoors, on a cloudy day, it's 10,000 lux. On a sunny day, it's 50,000 lux. So there's so much light outside. But that light in the morning is very critical in several ways. It synchronizes our circadian clock because natural daylight is rich in blue, but it also contains lots of infrared, which boosts our mitochondria and boosts energy production of the body and helps recovery from disease. So it's a double reason or multiple reasons to get outside in the morning hours. Now, we know the morning hours is more critical than the evening hours because there's studies where we've looked at where it's been done several times, where, for example, patients with depression or anxiety who are admitted to hospital, and one half of the hospital rooms face southeast, so they get the morning sunlight, and the other half of the hospital rooms on the other side of the corridor face northwest. The patients in the sunlit rooms, the southeast-facing rooms, get out of hospital in half the time, with their disorders treated effectively, even though they got the same medications, the same doctors, the same disease, the same therapy sessions. They get out in half the time when they get the morning sunlight. So that is another key part of the whole puzzle, getting morning light. The third part of the issue is at night, avoiding sleeping with the lights on at night. Now, amazing number of people in the modern society sleep with the lights on. If we look at elderly populations, it's often 50% or more leave the lights on at night. It's often to do with anxiety or loneliness and watching TV or whatever. But that causes double the risk of obesity, double the risk of diabetes, double the risk of, and we're talking about odds ratio of near 2.0, for example, for those who know about risk ratios. So we're seeing double the risk of those people who've got the lights on at night. So again, the very important thing is getting all lights out of the bedroom and sleeping in the dark. And the third part, or the fourth part, I should say, of the equation is keep all of what you're doing on a regular schedule. So the people who are swapping the time, staying up late, getting up early, all sorts of regular times, so they've got busy lifestyles, much to do, and so forth. But those people are systematically unhealthier. Now, the effects of all this, Rajesh, are not just on the diseases we've talked about, the obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and so forth. It also affects lifespan. So people who get out in the daytime actually live years longer. It's been shown in very big studies, and we're talking about study in Sweden of 29,000 Swedish women, study in England of 88,000 men and women in England, showing years extra of lifespan, as big as the effect of smoking or not smoking, by just getting outside versus staying indoors. So, all these things, and we know that the effect of psychiatric illness is 30% higher in people who have light at night. And by the way, how do they do those studies? Well, in some of them, they put little meters on them so that it's constantly detecting how much light they're seeing and recording that 24/7 around the clock, and actually record how much light that they are actually getting. So all this is covered in my book called The Light Doctor. It's to talk about the science, and it's also to talk about the new solutions of the lights that are available now, and the solutions available, including various other solutions such as blue blocking glasses and so forth, as to how to use them for your health.
That's really awesome, Dr. Martin. I wanted to know exactly at what time in the morning it is good to go out. Like, is it 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, or 9 o'clock? What is the time range?
Well, what I like to say is it depends on the season of the year, and particularly if you're in a northern latitude like we are in Boston or people are in Europe, then in fact there's a big seasonal changes. In the summer, you don't want to. Some people say, "Well, I worship the sun. I get up at sunrise." That is actually not a healthy thing to do in the summer months because the sun arises so early. Because light at that time of day shifts your clock eastward. It pushes you hours out of whack. So the time you want to see the light is somewhere in the first half of the morning, but not immediately after sunrise. And as long as you get a nice, good boost of natural light in the first half of the morning, then that really stabilizes your clock. It helps your sleep. It improves your health.
So, what is the impact of ultraviolet rays, Dr. Martin? So, there is a fear among the people that if we go out, there is a chance of affecting ultraviolet rays on us, and it may harm us by affecting us in the terms of getting us skin cancer and all. So, what do you say about that?
Well, that is right. There is an increased risk of skin cancers, but in reality, the very interesting thing about that Swedish study I mentioned with 29,000 women, that was a study when they set it up to look at skin cancer risk in these 29,000 Swedish women. And they were focused on that. What and to be sure, the women who spent more time outdoors got more skin cancers. However, they lived years longer. So the overall value in health way outweighed the skin cancer risk. And so, yes, there is some risk of skin cancers, and you can use, some blockers and so forth, if you're sensitive. But that's one reason we talk about doing it in the morning as opposed to the middle of the day when the sun intensity is most extreme. But essentially, yes, that's a trade-off. But the trade-off in terms of your overall health is much, much bigger, so that your overall health, your cardiac disease, your metabolic disease, diabetes risk is all reduced. And most skin cancers can be dealt with very effectively if they do occur. So it didn't affect the lifespan.
So nowadays we are seeing lots of usage of mobile phones. So we are getting lots of light from those mobile phones. So how those lights are going to affect our body cycles?
Well, one thing, there's been a lot of debate because some people have talked about they certainly produce blue light because they've got LEDs, and so do computer screens, just as you and I are talking on right now, produce this blue-rich light. They don't have to, by the way, because you can build computer screens that are blue-free, and that technology now exists, although it's not yet widely adopted. But essentially, that blue, what it does is it causes more disruption of sleep. Now, there's been some debate in the sleep science community because one measure that people use of the effect on sleep is sleep onset. What time do people fall asleep? That does not change very much, whether you've got blue light or not blue light. And the answer is that's not a very good measure of sleep, because if you look at those people, they sleep much more poorly when they're seeing blue light. Their sleep is more disrupted, they're more fatigued and so forth, as well as the other risks. So it's not just the time you fall asleep, because that's determined by other things, like the build-up of sleep pressure with hours you've been awake is a big determinant of sleep onset time. But in fact, in terms of sleep quality, that's where you really see the difference of blue-rich light and its negative effects.
So, Dr. Martin, there are some countries where there is no sunlight. We often hear about some countries where they do hardly get sunlight. So, such kind of people, what they have to do?
Well, I think what you need to do is use the new lights that are becoming available, which actually provide what's called circadian lighting. In other words, lighting that provides that 480 nanometer blue-rich light during the day, and which provides zero blue or zero 480 blue light during the nighttime. And so, we've worked in a number of situations in industry where people are working in 24/7 type schedules, and we've showed significant improvements in health, well-being, performance, reduction in errors, and so forth, improvement in sleep when you use circadian lighting, as we call it. So that's really, I think, the big trend there. You can make artificial light to be full spectrum, to mimic daylight. You can make artificial light that contains infrared. It's really a question of choosing the correct lights, and that's why the lights on the shelves today, the mass-produced LEDs, are really quite undesirable. They don't actually produce enough of that critical 480 blue during the day to synchronize your circadian clocks. That's why you have to get outside to supplement. And they cause far too much of that blue in the evening hours. So basically, the real question is, finding the lights. And one of the things in my book, I talk about the type of lights that are available, where to find them. I also have a website called circadianlight.org, which talks about where these different solutions are, the solutions of lights and light bulbs, solutions of blue blocking glasses. You have to be careful about blue blocking glasses, because a lot of the blue blocking glasses on the market today are not healthy. They actually do not block the correct blue, and you don't want to use them during the daytime because you want to see blue. So one of the key things to look is how yellow-orange colored are the glasses. That's the giveaway that they are going to probably be blocking the right blue. So that's part of the solution. And when kids, recent study here at Harvard with high school students provided blue blocking glasses in the evening, showing that their math scores improved. That's something parents care about when they block the blue light. We're doing a lot of harm to our kids, to our children, and to ourselves by using this blue-rich LED light night and day.
So, Dr. Martin, you are working more on Circadian Research Center. So, tell us about the Circadian Research Center and what is the objective of it.
Well, our focus is on how to create lights that are healthy and to do the research to demonstrate that they have real medical results to them. In other words, and so-called evidence-based. So we like to do, but we're looking at all the solutions that are coming out. We're evaluating them. My book, The Light Doctor, is discussing this, but I also have a Substack column on Substack, which there are free as well as paid subscriptions to. Anybody can follow that. Every 2 weeks, I'm talking about the latest breakthroughs, the latest results, the latest products that are coming out in this space. So that's one way to keep in touch with this rapidly growing field.
Yeah, so we are seeing a lot of smart cities. We are seeing huge buildings. We are seeing schools. We are seeing hospitals, offices. Do you think current setup which is there, are they following the best practices of light? So, what is your opinion?
I don't think they are, because in the old days of architecture, the pre-electric era, buildings were designed to maximize the value of daylight entering the building. In other words, you with large, tall windows and so forth, and positioning, and making spaces not too deep, so that daylight could penetrate. Um, and that's one of the things. And there's a lot of very smart architecture that went on in the days before electric lights. Unfortunately, what happened with the invention of electric lights and of air conditioning is people thought, oh, we can now build large buildings with a large, deep space in the middle, and we can put in air conditioning and we can put in electric light. And that is far cheaper to have any building has four walls, but the bigger the space, the less building you have to construct, the less walls you have to construct per unit space inside. And so we got ourselves into some very unhealthy situations there. There are new technologies like bringing daylight or sunlight into buildings. I know there's a lot of work on that, partly because of energy issues. It's a challenging technology because it has to move around with the sun and adjust, but it is one of the things to bring full spectrum daylight in. And we also, in our buildings, are putting in a glass that's meant to be energy efficient. Unfortunately, it blocks out a lot of the ultraviolet, but it also blocks out all the infrared. And so that in turn means that we're only getting a rather narrow spectrum coming into buildings. I think we might just say a word about in Asia, there is a large population of kids who are becoming myope with short-sightedness, myopia. The population in some in Asian countries is increasing from 25% of kids to 50% of kids. It's because they don't get outside. They don't get exposed to the full range of the natural spectrum. They're on their screens and their computers, they're indoors, and they're illuminated by LED lights. And so what we're understanding is some parts of the light spectrum that are actually called UV, but I think a little unfortunately, like, for example, 380 nanometer, which is really a visible, it's a deep violet light, actually is quite critical to the health of the eyeball and the blood supply of the eyeball and the function and the length of the eye. And so if you block that out, and even my eyewear now blocks out everything below 400 nanometers, with this whole idea, that in fact is causing increased risk of myopia. And so the kid gets a prescription for glasses. The glasses block out this deep violet because of the UV film protection on it. And as a result, the myopia gets worse. Whereas the kids are given clear glasses with no UV blocking, the myopia gets cured. So it's really, we're learning more and more about this, about light, the power of light, and how widespread this effect is, and how essential for our health. For millions of years, people have been, the world has been under, obviously, natural light. We've now, in a very short space, created very artificial light that is, very harmful. In fact, we might call it junk light, just like we have junk food, just as unhealthy for you.
So, Dr. Martin, most of the people are taking supplements to gain the energy that we get from light. So, one of the important vitamin supplement we get is vitamin D. So, do you support it? Is it good to take supplements so that whatever the energy do we get from sunlight, we are getting through medicine? Is it suggestible?
Yes, well, we are deprived of ultraviolet light, which is, you need ultraviolet light, particularly down near 300 nanometers, in the deep ultraviolet light to convert for the production of vitamin D. We get so little of that that supplements are helpful to reduce that risk. But as I say, you have to be careful with supplements because there's so much natural value going outside. You can get in natural daylight, you're going to get a full benefit of that. But for people who are forced to stay indoors, then actually supplements are very helpful.
So, Dr. Martin, is there one simple piece of advice you would give to help people live healthier lives using light and timing? What would it be?
Well, as we talked about earlier, the basic rule is get yourself on a healthy light diet. That means sleeping in the dark at night. It means getting out in the mornings in natural daylight and sunlight. It means staying, if you can, near windows during the day, getting natural light. It means avoiding blue-rich light at night. Make sure the light is blue-free in the evenings. And then finally, sleeping in the dark at night. So that's the formula. And if you follow that on a regular schedule, you get an enormous boost to your health.
Thank you so much, Dr. Martin. It was really awesome to have you. It's really honor to have you in this show, and you have provided lots of valuable insights on light, as you are the light doctor, and you have given lots of great advice on what should be done to get good health from the light. Thank you so much, and thank you so much from my audience, Dr. Martin.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, Rosie.
Thank you so much. It's done.